You are probably wondering how this lady go from this to this and why you should not settle for a broke man. I know you are wondering too. Just continue watching and watch to the end. Enjoy this captivating story. Once upon a time, in a bustling town, there lived a young woman named Adanna. Adanna was 28 years old, and her beauty was the talk of the town. She was known for her stunning curvy figure, which caught the eye of every man who crossed her path. Her skin glowed like the morning sun, and her smile was as bright as the stars. Her beauty was a gift from the gods, and men would go to any lengths to be close to her. But this beauty, which should have been a blessing, turned out to be a curse. You see, men were drawn to Adanna not because of her character or her kind heart, but because of her figure. They admired her curves, praised her looks, and showered her with gifts, but none of them truly loved her. They only wanted to possess her, to show her off like a trophy. And when they were done, they left her heartbroken. Adanna had been through many heartbreaks that she cared to remember. There was Nnamdi, the wealthy businessman who had promised her the whole world. He had wined and dined with her, taken her on luxurious trips, and made her believe that they had a future together. But as soon as he got what he wanted, he disappeared without a trace, leaving her devastated. Then there was Shidi, the charming lawyer who had swept off her feet. He had made her believe that he was different, that he truly cared for her. He had talked about marriage, about building a life together, and Adanna had believed him. But one day, she found out that he had been seeing another woman behind her back. When she confronted him, he didn't even bother to deny it. He simply shrugged and told her that she should have known better than to trust a man. And how could she forget Ifeanyi, the handsome doctor who had stolen her heart? He had been so attentive, so caring, and Adanna had thought that she had finally found the one. But just like the others, Ifeanyi turned out to be nothing than a liar. He had been engaged to another woman the entire time they were together. And when Adanna found out, he had the nerve to blame her for being too naive. One day, after yet another failed relationship, Adanna decided she had had enough. She could no longer bear the pain of loving men who only saw her as an object. She decided to focus on herself and her future. No more relationships, no more men. She would be single, independent, and free from the chains of false love. Adanna threw herself into her work. She had always been a talented cook, and people loved her food. With the little savings she had, she decided to open a small restaurant in town. She called it Adanna's Kitchen. The restaurant quickly became popular because of her delicious meals and warm hospitality. Adanna's cooking was a reflection of her personality, bold, vibrant, and full of flavor. She took pride in every dish she prepared, and her customers could taste the love and care she put into her food. Running the restaurant was hard work, but Adanna didn't mind. She would wake up early in the morning to prepare the day's meals, and she didn't close until the last customer left. Her dedication paid off, and her business began to grow. Adanna was finally happy. She had something that was hers, something that no one could take away from her. Months passed, and Adanna's restaurant continued to thrive. She had no time for relationships, and she liked it that way. She was content being single and focused on her goals. She made new friends, and her life was peaceful. But even as she poured herself into her work, Adanna couldn't completely shake off the loneliness that sometimes crept into her heart. At night, when the restaurant was quiet and the lights were dim, She would sit alone in a small apartment and think about the love she had lost. She would remember the men who had hurt her bad, and she would wonder if she would ever find someone who truly loved her for who she was and not just how she looked. Adanna's restaurant had become a staple in the community. People from all walks of life came to enjoy her delicious meals and the warm atmosphere she had created. She had regular customers who came in every day and new ones who heard about her restaurant through word of mouth. Adanna took pride in knowing that she had built something that brought people joy. But as her business grew, so did the demand of her time and energy. Adanna was always on her feet, always working, always making sure everything was perfect. She rarely had time for herself, and the little free time she had was spent resting or preparing for the next day. One evening, after a particular busy day at the restaurant, Adanna sat at one of the tables to catch her breath. She looked around at the empty chairs and sighed. The restaurant was quiet now, but the memories of the day's hustle and bustle were still fresh in her mind. She was tired, but it was a good kind of tired, the kind that came from doing something she loved. As she sat there, lost in thoughts, the door to the restaurant opened, and a man walked in. Adanna looked up and saw a tall, broad-shouldered man with a friendly smile. He was wearing a simple shirt and jeans, and he had a relaxed, easygoing demeanor. "Good evening," the man said, his voice warm and cheerful. "Are you still open?" Adanna smiled and nodded. "Yes, we are still open. Please have a seat." The man sat at the table near the window, and Adanna went over to take his order. He introduced himself as Obinna, a truck driver who delivered gas to businesses in the area. He told Adanna that he had heard great things about her restaurant and had decided to stop by after work. "I'm glad you did," Adanna said as she wrote down his order. "I hope you enjoyed the food." Obinna smiled and thanked her as she walked back to the kitchen. Adanna couldn't help but feel a slight flutter in her chest. There was something about Obinna that intrigued her. He had a calm, confident air about him, and his smile was genuine and kind. Adanna prepared Obinna's meal with extra care, making sure everything was just right. When she brought the food to his table, she noticed that he was looking around the restaurant, taking in the decor and the atmosphere. "This place is really nice," Obinna said as he took a bite of his food. "You've done a great job here." "Thank you," Adanna replied, feeling a warm glow of pride. It's been a lot of work, but it's worth it. As Obinna ate, he and Adanna struck up a conversation. He told her about his work as a truck driver and the different places he had been. He talked about his family, his hobbies, and his dream for the future. Adanna found herself opening up to him as well, sharing stories about her life, her business, and her struggles. The conversation flowed easily between them, and before she knew it, Adanna realized that she had been talking to Obinna for over an hour. She was surprised at how comfortable she felt with him, how easy it was to talk to him. It had been a long time since she had felt this way with a man. When Obinna finished his meal, he thanked Adanna for the food and complimented her on the cooking. He told her that he would definitely be coming back and that he would spread the word about her restaurant to his friends. Adanna smiled and thanked him, feeling a sense of satisfaction. As Obinna left, she watched him walk out of the door, a small smile playing on her lips. She didn't want to admit it to herself, but she was looking forward to seeing him again. True to his word, Obinna began visiting Adanna's restaurant regularly. He would stop by after work, sometimes just for a quick meal, and other times to chat with Adanna. Each time he came, he brought with him a warmth and kindness that Adanna found refreshing. Obinna's visit became something Adanna looked forward to. She found herself anticipating the sound of the doorbell, hoping it would be him. When he did come, they would talk for hours, sharing story, laughing, and getting to know each other better. Adanna noticed that Obinna was different from other men she had known. He wasn't flashy or arrogant. He didn't try to impress her with grand gestures or expensive gifts. Instead, he showed his affection in small, thoughtful ways. He would bring her fresh fruits or flowers, help her with heavy lifting around the restaurant, or simply sit with her and listen when she needed to talk. Slowly, Adanna's heart began to soften. One evening, while hanging out with her friends, Adanna told them about Obinna. She told them how he had been showing her love and care, and how he was starting to believe that he might be genuine. But her friends weren't convinced. Adanna, you are too good for a man like that. Her friend Nkem said, you've worked so hard to get where you are. Don't drop your standard for someone who doesn't have what you have. I agree, said Amaka, another friend. You need a man who is at your level, not someone who drives a gas truck. What if he's just after your money? Adanna listened to her friends, but deep down, she felt differently. She had seen how kind and caring Obi was. He had never asked her for anything, and it seemed to be content just being with her. She believed that love was more important than money or status. She was ready to drop her standards if it is meant finding true love. The next time Obinna came to see her, Adanna told him how she felt. She told him that she was willing to give him a chance and that she believed in the love he was offering. Obinna was overjoyed. He told her that he loved her more than anything and that he would never hurt her. Adanna and Obinna began their relationship, and for a while, everything seemed perfect. They were happy together, and Adanna felt like she had finally found the love she has been searching for. Obinna would often tell her about his dreams and plans for the future. He told her that he was not just a truck driver, but also the owner of the gas station where he worked. He claimed he also had an online business that brought in extra income. But as the time went on, Adanna began to notice some things that didn't quite add up. Obinna never seemed to have money, despite his claims of owning a business. Whenever they went out, Adanna was the one who paid for everything. Obinna would tell her he was expecting a large sum of money from a big business deal, and that she should lend him some money to tide him over until the deal came true. Adanna, blinded by love, gave Obinna whatever he asked for. She would send money to his family, pay for his expenses, and even lend him large amounts of money. She believed that once his business deal came true, he would pay her back. But the money never came, and Obinna's excuses grew more and more elaborate. As they get to know each other, they talked about their dreams for the future. Adanna told him about her past relationship and detailing what she had been through with men with false love. Her plans to extend her restaurant to open a second location in a nearby town. Obinna listened attentively, encouraging her and offering advice. She was open-minded, telling Obinna everything and anything. Obinna turned to Adanna and said, I really enjoy spending time with you, Adanna. You are not just beautiful, you are smart, hardworking, and kind. I admire you a lot. Adanna felt her heart skip a bit. She had heard compliments about her looks before, but this was different. Obinna was complimenting her character, her values, the things that truly mattered to her. I enjoy spending time with you too, Obinna. Adanna replied softly, You are a good man. Obinna smiled. As their relationship deepened, Obinna continued to subtly test Adanna's trust, borrowing a car for a day, asking for a loan to fix a problem, or using her phone to make a call when his battery died. Adanna, who had always been generous and trusting, didn't think much of it. She believed that in a relationship, partners should support each other, and she was happy to help Obinna whenever he needed it. One day, Adanna fell ill. She had been working so hard at the restaurant that her body finally gave in. Obinna, ever the caring boyfriend, called her and told her he was coming over to take care of her. When he arrived, he brought with him a large traveling bag. Adanna, weak and tired, assumed that Obinna was planning to travel after visiting her, but 3 days passed and Obinna showed no sign of leaving. When Adanna asked him about it, he told her that he wanted to stay with her for a while to help her recover. Adanna, too in love to argue, agreed. But things quickly began to change. Obinna became more and more controlling. He had access to Adanna's phone, which she used for all her business transactions. She knew all her pins and password, and he would often take her phone to help her with transactions. Adanna trusted him completely, so she didn't question it. Gradually, Adanna's business began to suffer. She had eaten deep into her capital, giving Obinna money and paying for their living expenses. Her booming restaurant was now struggling, and she found herself dipping into her savings just to keep it afloat. Obinna kept promising that his money was coming soon, but it never did. One day, Obinna suggested that Adanna sell some of her valuables to get more money. At first, she resisted, but Obinna used emotional blackmail to convince her. He told her that if she truly loved him, she would trust him and do what was necessary to get through this tough time. Adanna, blinded by love, agreed. Obinna even sold some of her belongings without her consent, claiming it was for their future. Adanna's once thriving business was now on the brink of collapse, and she was too in love to see the red flags. She believed that as long as they had each other, everything would be okay. Adanna's booming business collapsed eventually. She had spent more than necessary and unable to keep up. She closed down the business and was home with Obinna, still staying in her house. Life was very hard for her. They managed to eat from the little money she had. Obinna still continued to promise her heaven and earth that his money is coming soon. One day, Adanna called her friend Amaka and asked for help. She told Amaka about her financial troubles and how she needed capital to start over. Amaka, concerned for her friend, promised to send her some money the following week. The money would be enough to get Adanna back on her feet. When Obinna heard about the money, he became even more controlling. He would take Adanna's phone for long hours, telling her that he needed to use it. Adanna, trusting him completely, didn't think much of it. The day the money was supposed to arrive, Obinna was with Adanna's phone. When the alert came in, he received it without telling her. Holding her phone, he told her that he was going out to get something and would be back soon. He took her car key and drove off, leaving Adanna at home. Meanwhile, Adanna had planned to sell the car and use the money to support her business. As passed, and Obinna didn't return, Adanna tried calling him with her other phone, but he didn't pick up. She became too worried, thinking that something might have happened to him. She asked herself many what-if questions. What if something happened to him? What if he had an accident? What if he was kidnapped? But she couldn't find any answers. The next day, Obinna still had not returned. 3 days passed, and Adanna began to realize that something was terribly wrong. She started to suspect that Obinna might have scammed her, but she couldn't bring herself to believe it. She was too scared to face the truth. Adanna had nothing left. No money, no business, no food. She was starving, and so was her cat, who nearly eat her up due to starvation. In her desperation, she went to her neighbor to beg for food. The neighbor, surprised to see the once independent Adanna in such a state, gave her some food. Adanna divided the food into 2 portions, one for herself and one for her cat. She began selling her remaining valuables at ridiculously low prices just to survive. Adanna, who had once been so proud and successful, was now a shadow of her former self. Days turned into weeks, and Adanna still hadn't heard from Obinna. She was devastated, but she still held on to a sliver of hope that he would return. One day, while searching for something on top of her wardrobe, she found a file that Obinna had always boasted contained his land documents. Curious, Adanna opened the file. To her greatest shock, the papers were blank. There was no land documents, no business papers, nothing. It was all a lie. As she went through the file, she found a receipt for the rent of Obinna's house. It was then she realized the full extent of his deceit. Adanna called the agent's number listed on the receipt and gently asked for Obinna's number. The agent, not suspecting anything, gave it to her. When she called Obinna, he picked up and said, "Hello, who is this?" But as soon as he heard Adanna's voice, he went silent. Then in a cold, mocking tone, he said, "You are so dumb. You are nothing. You are the most foolish person I've ever met." And with that, he ended the call. Adanna felt like the earth should open and swallow her whole. Her heart sank and tears streamed down her face. She had gone from being a successful businesswoman to a broken, penniless woman, all because she had lowered her standard for a man who didn't deserve her. Adanna was devastated. She couldn't believe that she had allowed herself to be fooled so easily. She had lost everything: her business, her savings, her dignity. She was too ashamed to tell her friends what had happened, and she felt completely alone. Her heart couldn't contain it. It felt like a dream. A once independent lady, now miserable. She thought to herself, it would be better to die than to be mocked. She cried. She felt dejected, devastated, and finished. As she was attempting to end it all, a neighbor whom she went to beg for food knocked on her door. She hadn't heard nor seen her for some days and decided to check on her, carrying food along. When she got in, she was sad to see Adanna crying. "Adanna, what's wrong? Why are you crying?" the neighbor asked. Adanna, still crying, shamefully told her all that happened. Her neighbor felt sorry for her, encouraged her to start all over again and brace up. She consoled Adanna, telling her words of encouragement. She gave her the food and stayed a little while longer with her, embracing her. But as the days passed, Adanna realized that she couldn't stay in this pit of despair forever. She had to pick herself up and start over. She had done it once before and she would do it again. With a heavy heart, Adanna began the slow process of rebuilding her life. She reached out to her friends, who were shocked and saddened to hear what had happened. They rallied around her, offering her support and encouragement. It was nowhere near as glamorous as running her own restaurant, but it was a start. She began saving every penny she earned, determined to one day open her own business again. It wasn't easy. There were days when she wanted to give up, days when the pain of Obinna's betrayal felt too heavy to bear. But Adanna was strong. She had learned a hard lesson, but she was determined not to let it break her. Years passed and Adanna slowly but surely rebuilt her life. She saved enough money to open a small food stall, and from there, her business grew. She never forgot the lessons she had learned, and she never allowed herself to be taken advantage of again. As she worked to rebuild her business, Adanna also sought legal action against Obinna. She filed a police report and worked with a lawyer to try to recover her lost funds. The process was slow and frustrating, but Adanna was relentless. She wanted justice, not just for herself, but for all the other women who might fall victim to Obinna's schemes. Months passed, and little by little, Adanna's life began to improve. Her restaurants slowly regained the former glory, and she even managed to save enough money to start planning for the future again. The pain of Obinna's betrayal still lingered, but it no longer controlled her. She had found a way to move forward from the wounds he had inflicted. But just as she was starting to feel like she was getting her life back to track, Adanna received some unexpected news. The police had finally tracked down Obinna, and he had been arrested on charges of fraud and embezzlement. The authorities had uncovered evidence that he had scammed several women, just as he had done to Adanna. Hearing this, Adanna felt a mix of emotions. On one hand, She was relieved that justice was being served, but on the other hand, she couldn't help but feel a deep sadness for all the lives Obinna had ruined, including her own. As the months passed, Adanna's business continued to grow. She hired more staff, expanded the menu, and even began hosting events and catering services. The restaurant was thriving, and Adanna felt a deep sense of satisfaction, knowing that she had built it all herself, despite the challenges she had faced. One evening, as she was closing up the restaurant, Adanna noticed a familiar figure standing outside. It was Ugochi, one of her regular customers and a friend who had supported her through the difficult times. Ugochi, what brings you here so late? Adanna asked with a smile as they unlocked the door. I was in the neighborhood and I thought I had to stop by. Ugochi replied, her tone warm and friendly. I wanted to see how you are doing. It's been a while since we talked. Adanna invited Ugochi inside, and the two women sat down at the table, sharing a pot of tea. They talked about everything, life, business, and the ups and downs they had both experienced. I'm really proud of you, Adanna, Ugochi said after a while. You've been through so much, but you've come out stronger. You've built something amazing here, and I know you are going to keep growing. Adanna smiled, feeling a sense of pride. Thank you, Ugochi. It hasn't been easy, but I've learned a lot. I learned the hard way. I just wish. She trailed off, unsure of how to express the feelings that had been weighing on her heart. Ugochi reached across the table and placed a hand on Adanna's. You wish you could trust again? I understand. Adanna looked down at their hands and said, I don't know if I can, Ugochi. Every time I think about opening up to someone, I remember my past and what happened with Obinna. I'm scared of getting hurt again. Ugochi squeezed her hand gently. It's okay to be scared, Adanna, but you can't let that fear control your life. You deserve to be happy, to find love again, and it's okay to take things slow, to protect your heart, but don't close yourself off completely. There are good people out there who will appreciate you for who you are, not just for what you can give them, not for your curve, not for your money. Adanna nodded, her heart heavy with emotion. She knew Ugochi was right, but it was hard to let go of the fear that had taken roots in her heart. As they continued talking, Ugochi mentioned that she had recently met someone, a man named Emeka, who had started coming to her church. He was kind, respectful, and had a strong sense of integrity. Ugochi thought that he might be someone Ada would like to meet. I'm not trying to set you up, Ugochi said with a smile, but I think you two would get along. No pressure though, just think about it. Adanna chuckled, feeling a bit at ease. I'll think about it. Thank you, Ugochi. They finished their tea, and after saying their goodbyes, Ugochi left the restaurant. Adanna looked up and stood in the quiet empty space, thinking about what her friend had said. Could she really open her heart again? Could she allow herself to trust, to hope for love once more? As she walked home that night, Adanna thought about the future. She knew that she couldn't let fear dictate her life. She had already proven to herself that she was strong enough to overcome adversity. Maybe it was time to take another step forward, to open herself up to the possibility of finding love again. Adanna decided she would meet Emeka. She wasn't expecting anything, but she was willing to take the chance. After all, she had nothing to lose and everything to gain. A few weeks after a conversation with Ugochi, Adanna agreed to meet Emeka. They arranged to meet at a local cafe, a neutral place where they would talk and get to know each other without any pressure. When Adanna arrived at the cafe, she was greeted by a tall, well-dressed man with a warm smile. Emeka was everything Ugochi had described: kind, respectful, and genuine. As they talked, Adanna found herself relaxing, enjoying the easy flow of conversation between them. Emeka Emeka was a civil engineer who had recently moved to the area for work. He was compassionate about his job and he spoke with enthusiasm about the project he was involved in. Adanna admired his dedication and his strong sense of responsibility. As they talked, Emeka listened attentively to Adanna's story. He didn't judge her or offer unsolicited advice. He simply listened, offering support and understanding. Adanna was surprised by how comfortable she felt around him, how easy it was to open up to him. Over the next few weeks, Adanna and Emeka continued to see each other. They went on walks, shared meals, and spent time getting to know each other. Adanna found herself looking forward to their meetings, enjoying the connection they were building. But even as their relationship grew, Adanna remained cautious. She had learned from her past experiences and she wasn't going to rush into anything. Emeka understood this and he respected her boundaries, never pushing her to move faster than she was comfortable with. As times passed, Adanna began to realize that Emeka was different from the men she had known before. He wasn't interested in her because of her looks or what she could offer him. He was genuinely interested in her as a person, in her dreams, her fears, and her aspirations. One evening, as they walked along a quiet street, Emeka took Adanna's hand and said, "I know you've been through a lot, Adanna, and I want you to know that I'm here for you. No matter what, I don't expect anything from you except honesty. I care about you and I'm willing to take things as slow as you need." Adanna looked up at Emeka, her heart swelling with emotion. She had been so afraid of getting hurt again. But in that moment, she realized that she didn't have to be afraid anymore. She had found someone who respected her, who valued her for who she was, and who was willing to build a relationship based on trust and mutual respect. "Thank you, Emeka," Adanna said softly. "That means more to me than you know." As they continued walking hand in hand, Adanna felt a sense of peace that she hadn't felt in a long time. She knew that the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but she was ready to face it with Emeka by her side. Adanna had learned that love wasn't about finding someone who could solve all her problems or fill the void in her life. It was about finding someone who would walk beside her, supporting her as she faced her challenges and celebrating with her when she achieved her dreams. With Emeka, Adanna felt like she had finally found that kind of love, and for the first time in a long time, she felt hopeful about the future. And one day, as they hung out in a luxurious cafe, to Adanna's greatest shock, he brought out a ring and proposed to her. As he lifted her face, she saw her friends coming out with a placard written, "Will you marry me?" Adanna was so surprised, excited, and have a gush of emotions running through her. She said yes, and they kissed. Months later, Emeka and Adanna got married in an elaborate wedding, surrounded with friends and families who genuinely care, and they live happily ever after. Guys, this is the end of the story, but we can't end it without talking about some moral lessons of this story. Adanna's journey teaches the importance of recognizing one's self-worth and not compromising it for the sake of a relationship. Her initial experiences with men who were only interested in her physical appearance led her to heartbreaks, but she eventually found strength in focusing on herself and rebuilding her life. This story emphasizes that true happiness and fulfillment comes from within, and that is essential to prioritize self-respect and independence. The story also highlights the dangers of trusting too easily and the importance of being cautious in relationships. Adanna's experience with Obinna, who deceived her and took advantage of her kindness, serves as a warning to be vigilant and not ignore red flags. It underscores the need to protect oneself, emotionally and financially, and to be wary of those who might exploit trust for their own gain. Adanna's ability to bounce back from betrayal and rebuild her life shows the power of resilience. Despite the challenges she faced, she never gave up and eventually found happiness and success. This story also illustrates the importance of having a supportive community and friends who stand by you during hard times, helping you to overcome obstacles and emerge stronger. Thank you so much for watching till the end. I sincerely do appreciate your love and support, and I love you all right back. Stay blessed, positive, and never drop your standard for anyone. I will see you in another story. Till then, bye for now.